Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Real Fucking Talk. I'm your host Chris Shang. Today we have Daniel, who is the CEO co-founder of JustPaid.ai. And we don't know where we're gonna go, but we're gonna have a conversation about something kind of interesting and cool. But let's hear a little bit more about your story first before we dive into that.
Sure. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My name is Daniel Kivatinos. I'm co-founder of JustPay.ai. Essentially, it's a smart new way to do invoicing to generate and get and receive payments. Think of it as like an assistant to a company to help the finance team.
Got it, got it. And how long have you been working on this one?
About 2 years, we started the company and got into Y Combinator, the accelerator program, and kind of we're off to the races from there, building as fast as possible.
Got it. Very cool. Tell me a little bit about your background. I have a few questions that I kind of want to jump into, but before I do that, just kind of like let's lay the groundwork for your area of expertise because you've been an engineer, programmer, right? You've been a co-founder multiple times, did some teaching. But talk us through a little bit about your journey, like just out of the things that you've done professionally, that's kind of piqued your curiosity and what that's looked like.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say like as the times change, like my curiosity changes.
Yeah.
So, you know, originally I was super interested in music way back when and interested
Yeah.
in art and philosophy. And, as time goes on, I realized there was a lot of other things happening in the world that would just like move and shift the world at a fast pace. And looked into the technology side and realized like, hey, the internet's going to be a thing. It's going to be big. Started to really get into that and started to move into the technology space, got my master's in computer science.
Mhm.
And from there really just dove into like I'd say the world of startups before it was really popular.
Yeah.
I think now it's a big thing out there and I think a lot of people are excited about startups, but I'd say things ebb and flow. It's not like I'm in one particular space. I know a lot about healthcare. I know a lot about the payment space.
Interesting. You talk about kind of like starting off with your interest primarily being more on the creative side. I mean, for me, I feel like it was very much similar. Like I always wanted to make movies as a kid. And so like I ended up doing a segue into that before I started entrepreneurship and getting involved in startups. But for me, as somebody who didn't go to school for computer science or didn't like, dive into the technical side of things, was there like from the creative to then doing that and going to get your master's in computer science, like was there an epiphany moment of like, oh crap, like internet's going to be big, internet has these possibilities, and you're like, if I'm not a part of that, then I'm going to be on the other side of it, which is just as a consumer doing something, that may or may not be interesting for me.
I don't want to date myself too much, but I was really in the creative arts in that space, and I feel like you're always swimming upstream,
Uh-huh.
meaning there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of amazing people in that world, and it's hard to have a breakthrough. It's hard to like have a breakthrough moment. When I saw like internet companies like Napster coming out and LimeWire
Yeah.
and all of these other companies kind of disrupting like that industry, the music industry and like even the movie industry a bit. And I was thinking like, hey, this is an industry that's really changing the world like rapidly. You could either like fight the change or you can like be part of that change in a good way.
Yeah.
And I realized, hey, I should go into that technology space and really look at it to see what is happening there and what I could do there. So I felt like the moment I jumped into the technology side, I felt like there was such a rapid force of change that I could be part of. There were just so many opportunities that just came my way.
Yeah.
Um, the movie industry, the music industry, it is hyper like condensed in I would just say like LA, honestly, in the United States at least. So you'd have to be there, right? And not only that, you have to be like amazing at what you do. In the technology space, you don't necessarily have to be in Silicon Valley. It does create better opportunities and better chances and a lot more opportunity. But I was not in Silicon Valley at the time. I was in New York, but I still felt those forces in the finance side of the industry. There was the big banks for there and the stock market and all of that. And you just see the technology and the rapid change that was happening all around you. It was super inspiring. And I got really hooked into that and said, hey, you know, I want to be part of this. I want to see what's happening here in this space. But that creative side does come along. I mean, I kind of view like programming as art,
Yeah.
where there's literally millions of ways to do something in like software. And art is like kind of painting the picture of like what is the easiest way for the user to do something. And it made it really fun. Like that whole, creative side of it. I felt like it was like you could just like paint a canvas and it was really just like a screen on a website. And that really like inspired me there. But hopefully that answers that question a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just more, I think like I think there's definitely like a relatability to the creative side. I think, having spent some time in that space, I think there is a certain amount of subjectivity that's beyond your control too. I remember like being on few stories around that, but I just kind of like one that's really short is just having worked with actors and managed actors at one point. There's points in time where they book a pilot or they book like a ensemble cast and they end up like casting the rest of it, and that individual ends up being just like too short compared to the rest of the cast, where it's like has zero control over that. That's not even about talent. It's not even about anything else other than the rest of the ensemble cast that they casted ended up being like a few inches taller and it didn't look right on camera, right? So like I think there's a few more instances that went through that was like that, where things just kind of get beyond your control. And the thing that I appreciated about entrepreneurship, especially like startups, was like the ability to be creative, but like have like access to data that helps you actually make those iterative changes in like real time and be pretty quick with the types of experiments that you want to run or deploy, and those are the opportunities to be like still like leveraging that muscle. Not sure if you feel like anything similar to that, but like around the developing side.
I mean, I do think like software is a living, breathing creature,
Yeah,
right? It is always evolving. I mean, what happened with like the cloud is, it's so mm, everybody knows what it is now and everybody kind of feels like it's just there, but it's every day like the software around you is getting better. Every day people are learning how to do things better. Every day like the operating systems in your life are getting better. The microwave, the TV, the car, like everything around you is literally built with software, and a lot of that is cloud-based where it's like optimizing itself all of the time for like a better like experience. Apple just had their big announcement. They're launching all of their new operating systems. I feel like that's just an example where you're not buying a new Mac, it's just the
yeah,
software in the cloud is like optimizing your Mac, and now you have a way better experience. But it's like painting. You have a painting in front of you and like you're working on it for months or years and you can literally change it and manipulate it, and it's really exciting to do that because it just you know the thing about a painting though is it's one painting, one person. Sure, you could distribute it on the web and like picture form, but when you create software you could have millions, billions, thousands of people using it and experiencing it, and it's for me that's the excitement. It's like music. It's very much like you could touch the lives of a lot of people, and it creates a really nice just meaning in your life in a sense, right? So like part of the why I do what I do is it creates a meaning where you're like, oh, all of these people are using this software and they care like I care and they're giving me feedback. This is amazing. It
yeah,
makes you want to just keep working on it more and more and more. Almost like that painting. If you had thousands of people looking at that painting and giving you feedback, it creates like a really nice energy exchange where you understand, oh, okay, I should change these colors over here because people are viewing this as, this way, and I wanted them to view it that way. Uh,
yeah. I mean, it's like a live interactive experience, right? It's like to me, it's like going into one of those kind of like interactive exhibits where it's like the things are changing as you kind of interact with it, whether it's the colors or the way that the screens will move and things like that. It's kind of like you have people that will gravitate towards some part of that, and then you can kind of look at that behavior and be like, oh, interesting. Like that's not something I took into account, and when I kind of put this together, whether again like it's an experience or it's a piece of software, right?
yep.
Yeah,
It might be, I mean, it might be more like, I hate to say it, like an arborist, someone that's curating like a tree,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
trees die,
yeah,
companies and software die as it becomes like old and antiquated and stale. And unusable if it doesn't keep up with the time. So I do feel like it's almost more living. It lives way more than just a painting, because a painting you could paint it once and it's there and it never changes and it's persistent.
Yeah.
Software, it's usable until it's not.
Yeah. I
Like,
agree.
you always have to be refining it and making it better for people, or else someone else will create
Yep.
a better arborist will come around and create a better experience. Then people will like look at that tree and go, I want to use, I want to look at this versus that. And the moment you
Yeah.
stop taking care of the software, it kind of just, it doesn't keep its life.
Yeah. And it's still like relatively young. I mean, I think when we look at how fast technology's gone, right? I think things typically will have cyclical cycles of change like every kind of like 10 years. You talk about SaaS products and how that's kind of been a bull run, for the past like 10, 12 years, replacing on-prem legacy software, right? And then even still, like it still hasn't like fully, it's not like 100% adopted. Yeah, you still have like companies that are using like on-prem solutions, like that's still trying to shift to cloud. Um,
I mean, software will be, what is it? There's homogeneous and heterogeneous.
yeah,
Homogeneous means one. Hetero, is this right? It means like multiple. I believe that's right. Like
I think so. Yeah.
if it's heterogeneous,
Sounds like it.
I don't think that everything will be in the cloud. I
Yeah.
think things will be
Yep.
on-prem. I think, things will be local to your
Yep.
device. I think things will be, it's never going to be everything in one
Yeah.
way. It's like thinking one car company will rule them all. I'm like, that's never going to be the case, because some people will like fast cars, some people will
Yep.
like, 16-wheeler trucks, other people will like RVs, other people will like
Yeah.
really cool race cars. So you're never going to get one thing to fit it all. So I think on-prem is okay. I actually think in some situations it's really like
Absolutely.
great to have.
Yeah, for sure. It sparks a lot of, as you're speaking, it sparks a lot of kind of just thoughts for me. But like, so one thing was, I'm sure you probably heard like Klarna last week is like disengaging with Salesforce and Workday and potentially reducing their workforce by like 50% and leading into AI to kind of like help solve for productivity across those fronts. First real company, I feel like, to kind of like a bigger company to make that kind of a level of announcement. Um, is it I've talked about this to peers and things like that. Some think it's really like kind of premature. Some think it's just like, this is the trending direction. Curious if you have any like takes on that action.
From sorry, the company is Klarna.
Klarna, yeah, the fintech company that allows you like do the like when you go to like e-commerce checkouts, they'll allow you to like take like larger, like a $500 payment and spread it out across like 4 payments.
Got it, got it. So they're changing to an AI company, is what you're saying.
I guess. I mean, like they're going from fintech to like, because I haven't seen like I've seen a lot of companies that like have leaned into AI and leverage it in part of their product offering, but I don't know if I've ever like still seen somebody where it's like replaced somebody, like replaced a team or replaced an individual yet, in a specific role. I know like there's a lot of things that are, I think, like promised right now, and there's a lot of things that there's a lot of cool things that AI can do, but in terms of like a practical, like doing a one-for-one swap out in terms of like human productivity, I don't think I've seen that yet or heard those stories. Because especially in the like sales enablement and marketing world, there's a ton of things, and I just haven't seen somebody where it's like, yeah, it's generating more meetings, or it's generating like us to be able to aggregate contact data at scale for our particular ICP, or like create messaging at scale. But like I haven't seen that yield like a higher number of like top line revenue or customers converted at a more efficient rate necessarily. So I'm just kind of curious um, if you've seen that with any kind of companies, or like if you're thinking, that might be something that we're going to see more of in terms of like companies like betting more on building their own internal like AI systems, or if it's still premature.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that we could talk about in that area. I do think I kind of talk about human mode and AI mode.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so basically, human mode means it's going to a person is going to be watching over systems.
yep,
And we talk about this a lot in my company where people need to be accountable for what the AI is looking at and doing. So like human mode is where AI will just help assist and save time. The human is still in the loop.
Yep.
It's very much like a self-driving car on autopilot in a plane where you have to have a person there and it's going to do a lot of the work for you, the AI, but you're going to
Yep.
have to oversee it. And I think that having that model, it's almost like a hybrid car. It's like having the both of them together makes a better like workforce. So if you want to go to a fully AI mode, I think for us, like just looking at my company and Just Paid, so I'll give you an example. Say a company comes to us, they buy our product and they invoice one company and they invoice that company for, say they sent like 16,000 invoices. The
Yep.
invoice never changed. You might be able to switch from human mode to AI mode because the invoice is basically the same thing. The confidence level of the AI is like 99.9% because it's seen enough. There are situations where you can have the AI take over like that.
Yeah.
Um, but having humans in the loop, at least for critical activities, is like core right now. And what I mean by that is like if you're driving a car, flying a plane, anything in finance, if you're doing something in medicine, all of those areas, a human in the loop creates a more protective experience. And, you know, as the world changes and as things like change out there, I think it's almost like an organism. You're going to have different parts of AI do different things in special ways, and you're going to plug them together to create an even more efficient human being. And instead of hiring like a finance team, say there's a public company and they're generating, billions of dollars, they might hire a huge finance team of like, I don't know, 300 people, right? If you have AI involved, you may be way more efficient. You could hire 100 people
Yeah. Yeah.
and save time instead of having like really repetitive tasks like be like done by somebody. And what's a repetitive task? Making a phone call for an invoice?
Yeah.
Like, hey, just a heads up, your invoice was sent out, you know, 70 days ago. Just a heads up, like we would like to know like when payment is coming in.
Yeah.
That those sorts of things just very repetitive, like if you designate someone specifically for that task. Um, I kind of view it like farming. The very early days of farming, all humans doing it, we were all figuring it out. Then we created some tools. Those tools helped people like really work more efficiently. And then we created even better tools. And then basically other, people could like go work in cities and they didn't have to farm. I think AI is very much in the ARPANET days where it's like starting to look really, really valuable.
Yeah.
ARPANET, I don't know if you know what ARPANET is, but it was the very first, okay, it was the very first internet. It was built by the military
Okay.
just in case like a world war happened.
Yep. Yep. Now I remember.
They had a way to communicate with each other. What happened was ARPANET became the internet as universities started to create web pages based off of ARPANET. So like I kind of view this as our ARPANET moment in AI,
Yeah.
where we have something so revolutionary, people are starting to understand how do I utilize this in ways that are, unbelievable. And they're going to start pouring more. We're all pouring effort in technology to like make this way more of a heterogeneous AI. And that's what's going to happen. So like some
Yeah.
AIs are going to be really good at math, other AIs are going to be really good at like creativity, other AIs are going to be really vertically focused in like driving like 16-wheeler trucks. You kind of
Yeah.
you count you bring them together for different like workforces when you need that. And it's going to be a really, really, honestly, really exciting time. I do think it's moving in this path. And I think that the AI it's real and it's saving people time today. I'm sure you're using AI in some ways to either do research or whatnot, but it's just exciting to see everything that's happening out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. So I was watching the podcast All In, right, with those VC guys, and they had Elon on there. And then, Elon's talking about uh the humanoid robots that he's building. And then, he's imagining this world where at some point there's going to be more robots than humans. And I mean, I think when you talk to like all these like leaders, like all the AI leaders, they have this kind of like dystopian future of what generative AI can do and the potential of it, and how it's going to shape shift the world. But similarly, it gets me to thinking, right? Which is like there's a tremendous amount of resources that has to be allocated towards it in order for it to realize that potential, whether it is like natural resources, like to actually build the GPUs, or like the energy resources to actually power the compute. What do you like? How do you think about that stuff at all? Like, is that play into your guys' business, or just like even from, from like a bystander kind of like looking at all this hype, like I almost feel like there has to be this race to realize certain level of potential of generative AI to reach a certain, threshold where it actually is being fully monetized for the amount of investment that's going into it, and then the balance with the use of resources to get to the realization of that potential. I don't know if that kind of, if you've thought about stuff like that either.
I mean, I, what you're saying is that a lot of corporations are looking for returns like long term, and they're putting huge amounts of like investment into it. You know, is it the wrong move? I would say if you don't innovate, you die as a company.
Yeah,
And the companies that are innovating the most and trying to figure out AI the fastest are probably going to reap the most rewards for like pouring investment into that. And I there's companies out there that they're very apparent that they can like help people. I just spoke to an investor and he was talking about like blind people with robot dogs.
yeah,
And the robot dog doesn't have to go to the bathroom, you don't have to feed it, and like these robot dogs are actually helping assist people, and they're walking them to like grocery stores. And you know if you don't do it, someone will. Like,
yeah,
and I think this is like if there's like an assistive dog, if there's an assistive company that's in technology for like robot dogs, I think that they have to move forward and they have to make that investment, or else a better company will come along. And the way we were talking about software being a living breathing thing, companies are almost like fiefdoms, sub fiefdoms inside of the United States, but they're
yeah,
also living breathing things with like many organisms, and they have to like innovate or it dies itself. So like it's kind of a weird dilemma people are in, that they're like, I have a stance, we're not going to be using AI. I have a stance that this is not appropriate for my business. You have to look and you can't ignore it. And if you don't make the investment, that's okay, but you have to acknowledge, why are we not making the investment? Just ignoring technology at the rate that it's going is hugely detrimental to any business. Like, are there businesses ignoring AI? Maybe. Like, what industries are ignoring AI and it might get disrupted? Um, it's very, very much like I don't know, Blockbuster Video.
yeah,
I don't know
of
if you know Blockbuster Video.
course. Yep.
Blockbuster Video was there, and it was there, and they basically revolutionized the VHS tape, and they had brick and mortar stores, and it was like a fun experience to like go there, and like you could pick out your videotape. And Netflix was like, let's just ship out a DVD
Yep.
and then we'll try to stream it. Like, they were moving and trying, unlike their competitor Best Buy. And I think if you stagnate, you die in this new day and age. So pouring all that money in, like, if you don't, what's the risk there, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
you know I I do think that there will be losers. Like, maybe there'll be like some companies that are not gonna make it. That's what happened in the days of the internet, but it's gonna actually be good for all of us. Like, it's gonna be good for you, Chris. You're gonna have better AI than ever. There'll be five dead companies that spent billions, but
Yeah.
Chris will have like way more AI because of them, and there'll be way more open source like AI models and whatnot because of like all of this push towards a
Yeah.
better like future.
Yeah, I get it. I totally, I get that. I mean, I feel like it's close, but we're not like fully there yet, where it's like, I feel like it's close. It's like potentially around the corner. I think, I watched an interview with Mark Randolph, one of the co-founders of Netflix, talking about how Blockbuster literally had like a handful of times to like, kill them and like, and shut them down. And the last CEO, I mean, by happenstance, wasn't even about anything strategic. They're trying to transition from like a $6 billion a year company, right, to like then why they weren't worrying about DVD, let alone streaming at that point, just because of like how much they were making annually. But like, it wasn't until like the board got rid of the CEO that was forming the initiative to counter Netflix, that it ultimately, like, they were about to like shut down Netflix through that initiative, but the board made a swap on the CEO because they wouldn't pay him this bonus. So he left, and they brought in some like retail convenience store CEO who's like, we should try to monetize on selling can lobster videos and utilize that. We know what happens now, but there's those instances, right? And I feel like AI is kind of in that situation too, where it's like, I think about, with OpenAI raising like another like almost $7 billion, burning through five, making revenue. They did like, a little bit over 3 billion this year so far, but it's like still like a race. And it's almost like if they do in like the next year or 2 years, to a certain degree, it's like, how long can they continue that burn? And will capital still be feeding it? And what if like, just a crazy scenario of like, what if they run out of capital? Like they all of a sudden don't get to the revenue targets that they need to get. And like, nobody's giving, like, they're not going to be able to raise its few $1 billion to extend that. Um, and if they go bankrupt, what is the implication of something like that? Does like a then, bailout come out from the government? Like the implication of like all the companies that ended up like utilizing, that technology. Like I just kind of think about like all these different scenarios, because it is like there has to be something truly realized from a very tangible like financial perspective for this to play out in the way that we've been promised to a certain degree, as well as like all the moving pieces that are trying to realize this picture. So I don't know if yeah, I kind of like, sorry, going down a rabbit hole, but some of the stuff that I think about,
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't disagree. Amazon, burned a ton of capital. Like a lot of companies burn capital for long periods of time, and it's just the nature of building a company sometimes in that way. Um, are you still there, Chris? Nope, I think I lost you, Chris. Oh,
sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Okay.
all good, all good.
Yeah. Um, Okay, yeah, anyways, we were kind of just talking about real quick, like, yeah, in a world where, potentially if an open AI goes bankrupt, right, like what happens and what are the implications of that? And you mentioned, like Amazon, burns through, has had, notoriously burned through years of capital.
I mean,
Yeah,
I could just tell you like that's the nature of like the industry and like building a company. Like the nature is like the strongest survive and they will, the weaker companies will like peel away. And I think it's okay. Like at the end of the day, like if OpenAI can't survive, I want them to survive. I really like the company. I really like the culture. It's very much like Kodak with digital cameras. Like
mm,
I loved Kodak. Kodak built the original camera. They got addicted to selling film and they created the first digital camera, but they realized, hey, we could sell like upcharge on film. The digital camera might hurt us. Then other companies came around and started just making like better digital cameras. Kodak is like a shell of what it used to be. It used to be like
that
it's not
makes
what
sense.
it used to be. So like if OpenAI fails, the others will
The
climb
others
up.
will come up. Yep, makes sense.
And like, there are such amazing cameras out there now, and Kodak sadly is not one of them because they didn't go the digital route. It was a problem within, their decision making and they didn't see it. They didn't see like what was going to happen. But if OpenAI gets to a certain point, all the competitors are going to learn from them. And then if they go into like disarray and the company falls apart, I really don't want that to happen. I really like the company. But if they go into disarray and the company falls apart, like all competitors will clamor to get that next spot and it will happen.
Yeah,
And like there were many, like I'll give you an example, DoorDash. I don't know if you use DoorDash or Instacart. There were many, many competitors in the 90s and the early 2000s who tried to become those companies.
yep,
Wrong time, wrong place, burned, millions upon millions of dollars in capital. DoorDash learned from them, but there's inflection points of like better hardware. Like the iPhone created a better experience for DoorDash, like to happen because you didn't have to sit in front of your computer to order it. You could be on your phone and you could just, same thing with Uber. Like you could get an Uber and it created a better experience than like the yellow taxi cab. So like if OpenAI falters, others will come. And I see them all like working really hard to create those really great experiences. And groups of people, it's all groups of people working hard to create those experiences. So even if like I don't think this is going to happen, but say an Amazon falters, like you
yeah,
know, an Apple falters, an OpenAI falters, others will come to take their
yeah,
place. And that's just the nature of like corporations in the United States. And the S&P 500, the period of time that a company stays on the S&P 500 is shorter and shorter every year, meaning the competition is getting greater and greater, and companies like fold and falter and like are removed from the S&P 500 and others are like placed in. So it's naturally happening in the largest companies, right? It's just happening like, well, if you look at it over time, you'll look at the S&P 500 and you'll just see they have these really beautiful like visual graphs on YouTube. If you type in like S&P 500
yeah,
over,
yeah, and
1900s to
yeah,
now, you'll see these like bungees of different companies coming and going and coming and going. And like coming and going means like Sears. There was a company Sears. I don't know if you remember it.
I
It was
do.
there. They were huge. There was another company, Toys R Us. Like I
Yep,
love that company. There was a
yep,
point where these guys dominated the world and something happened where they didn't move themselves forward and understand like Amazon's coming. They didn't see
yeah,
it. They didn't want to invest in it. They didn't want to do it. So I think like let the best man win in some ways. I think that's just the nature of the game, at least in the United States. It's like this is the way we all are structuring it, and like it's
that makes sense.
it's working that way. So it will be billions of dollars lost if OpenAI like is not there, but others have learned from it, so it's not totally a loss. Like
Yeah,
failure
yeah,
is not really a failure. It's like what did they do wrong? Let's learn from them and let's build something better.
yeah. Interesting. I mean, that's a very good perspective. Yeah, somebody will claim the spot and then they'll have learned from what those failings were and it'll probably just even be faster from that point on.
With,
Um,
I mean, you said something a little bit like it was really interesting. You said, what if the United States bails out the AI companies? I don't know what AI company is critical right now.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. There might be some AI companies that are critical, I mean, the banking system we all run, we all agree that the US dollar is like our way to exchange value with each other. So that's like that can't fail. So the US government has to make sure that works okay. So that they step in those instances. If the electrical companies, like the electrical grid goes down, they have to make that work. It's like
Yeah.
a utility. There's certain things out there that are like critical and other things are not. Is AI critical? We'd have to look into it more in some
Yeah.
certain stances. Like if there are AI dogs, and every blind person like in the United States is using AI dogs, like it is a critical service for like keep people like alive. So if the company starts to have problems, and like the government should look at them and say, hey, what is happening here for these disabled individuals? We may need to step in and like help this group because they're serviced by this AI. That I mean,
Yeah.
that's a situation where like they may need to step in. So it
Or if
might be
there's
case by
government
case.
contracts. Yeah, or government contracts tied to it. Like I think like IRS uses some version of like AI. I'm not sure if like they've internally sourced that, if they like, use third parties and as part of that. But if whatever those third parties are helping source that, workload, then it could potentially, that might be an implication.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's interesting that you were talking about like they're going to save these companies. Maybe,
Yeah.
you know,
Or makes sense. Yeah. Or maybe not. It just, yeah, depends on where they've spread into or what they've been, worked into. Um, Interesting. As we're rounding up on time, just kind of have a couple of quick like last questions, but um, what within the core business or within you personally, like what's kind of got you really excited, really curious today, and what do you think is like kind of like be I know it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of like where your interests play, but like what is keeping you like super locked in today?
yeah, I mean for me, I think the AI industry is like super exciting. I mean, I also think the mobile industry is super exciting. So it's like these are industries that are really, how will AI play into the mobile industry like long term? Um, I think one really interesting like thing that like I really like about what we're working on is basically you're creating like a long-term memory of experience. So like for us, a long-term memory of experience in invoicing and like payments. How do you create a more like democratize the way that like accountants are utilized across the United States? So like there is a massive problem happening in the United States where there is an accounting shortage. I think that was the Wall Street Journal or one of these larger companies, and there's kind of a bunch of other reporters out there talking about like the shortage in accounting. I don't know if you know anything about this, but there's a shortage in accounting happening across the United States.
Yeah, didn't know that. But interesting.
How do we solve for that problem? Not everybody wants to go into that industry. Not everybody wants to be an accountant. Like I just spoke to one yesterday who used to be an accountant. He quit being an accountant because he wasn't like that passionate about it. That's okay. But like it's almost like the farming industry, like, people may not want to harvest all of these crops. How do we leverage AI to help the accounting industry with less people there today? And for us, we're tackling it specifically from one task. The task is you run a business, you need an accountant, you need a team member to make sure that you're getting paid on time. How do we plug in an AI agent to help assist with some of that,
Yeah.
right? And that's really like what we're working on, at least in my company. And I'm like, every day we come into the office, we talk about that problem. We say, how do we make this like a better experience for all of these companies in the United States where you can run a business and your team, you can save some cost. You don't have to hire as many people, and you can literally plug in AI to help assist you in some of these services. That's the big vision of like where we're taking our company. So we're verticalizing. So like I think the success of a lot of these AIs are going to be hyper verticalized AIs, right? So like I keep going back to this robot dog that helps like the blind. I really like that. That's a really good vertical. Like I just spoke to someone else who's verticalizing like, wills and trusts, like with AI to assist with that. how many people do you know have $5,000 to pay for like a will and a trust?
Yeah,
Like not everybody can do that. And
yeah,
to hire a lawyer to do that is expensive. AI can maybe democratize that for people also. So like layering in like different AIs to save you money as an individual where you can't always have that money. You know, you have smaller startups, they can't afford a full-time accountant.
yeah,
They can't. It's expensive. And like, you know, the accountants want like to work at a bigger company a lot of the time where they have like a lot more benefits. You get these smaller mom and shop companies and they're just kind of getting by and then they kind of like don't even ask for the help. You know, it's good to have that help in place and like democratize. So I think like for me, it's like all you see all of these verticalizations happening slice by slice, slice, slice. And it's like it may not replace, but it may help
yeah, yeah,
speed up processes. And I'm really passionate about like the money movement side and like money insight side, meaning AI should let you know what's happening at your company at all times. Like we had all of these mass layoffs happening in, you know, during COVID. And the reality is people did not model in what type of situations could happen in their company. They got overly excited. They just hired without thinking about all of these different scenarios. And then they had to let all these people go. Like you think that these companies are like, you know, really smart human beings. I think companies have to be way more thoughtful about like the way that they run their businesses. Having AI in there saying like, here's 45 scenarios that will, you know, possibly happen. Here's 60 scenarios that are doomsday scenarios that might happen. So if you hire 72 people, this is what it's going to do to your company. If you hire 500 people, this is what it's going to do. If you hire those 6,000 people, this is what it's going to do. And you may have to do layoffs at like a 72% chance. Like there are a lot of smart people out there running these companies. They're really smart, but AI can also help look at historicals and look at different things and look at different perspectives and model things out differently.
mm,
You know, the big vision for us is like, how do we democratize a lot of this and give a lot more insights?
yeah,
Um,
think- yeah. Especially because I mean, I feel like, yeah, that's, I mean, it at scale, it becomes like very affordable and like low cost for people to be able to leverage something like that. It might be like a big investment of initial time and resources to develop, but it could definitely scale up.
exactly, exactly. I mean, there's so much like possibilities in AI and even on the creative side, like there's just so many different ways that people can be utilizing all of this technology. So I'm super excited to see like the way and the direction it's going. And you know, people talk about, well, what's going to happen to our jobs? I just think people will figure things out.
Yep,
I do think that the world will just give them time back
yeah,
and then they can work on better projects that they care more about.
yep, yep, absolutely. Very cool. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time today, sharing your experience, your journey, your inside thoughts. It was definitely a very interesting conversation.
Awesome, Chris. Well, thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.